Hey everyone, welcome back to the Performance Marketing Minds podcast, brought to you by Outbrain Direct Response. I'm your host, Joe Addona, and today I'm joined by Raanan Rosenbaum, co-founder at M&R Strategy. In this episode, Raanan shares how he transitioned from a traditional career to becoming a powerhouse in direct response marketing. We'll talk about the power of networking, the value of information as a currency, and the often overlooked elements of marketing funnels. Raanan also highlights neurodivergence as a business strength, which is a super cool conversation. We also dive into the rise of Eastern European brands and why trusting your instincts and asking the right questions are key to growth. Sit back, relax, and enjoy my chat with Raanan Rosenbaum. Start there, because I think the first connection I have from you, at least on Facebook, is a happy birthday with my face in May of 2023, which means we were definitely connected before that. Otherwise, you wouldn't.
Was it a jib jab? That was when I
So,
used to do the jib jabs like crazy. Yeah. I was real into those for a while.
yeah. I see me doing the worm, and it's a picture of
Nice.
me with a mustache, so it's too funny. So we must have been connected back in 2022, but I feel like that's a good lead into my story with you and your story in general in this world. Like, ever since I've been in the direct response world and been in some of these Facebook groups and started to network and know all the right people, your name constantly kept coming up, whether it was being at events and taking pictures with everyone or sharing your knowledge or just being really active in all of these groups. Like, was that always did you think about the long tail effects from that and how it would build your network, or are you just like the most personable person and
I
want to
mean,
talk to
I
everybody?
appreciate that, and I'm flattered for you to say it like that. I think along the way, I started to understand what I was doing and how it was working. A big part, as you know, is that this year I discovered that I am neurodivergent and most likely autistic, and it's reframed how I do everything because I understand that I live in patterns and I see things certain ways. So, like for instance, a big part of like networking on a social level that adds to the business is that I remember everything and I have this weird pattern recognition. So, like, I used to think, for instance, that some people were lazy in terms of relationships or making deals because I'd be at an event and there'd be a top performing copywriter, a top vendor, and they'd both be talking about their dream funnel they want to do. And they'd be discussing it with each other. And it's like, my dream is to do like a biblical survival offer. And the other guy's like, all I ever want to do is Jesus coming out, with a survival offer. And I see the deal right there. And then they'd walk away and I'd follow up and no one would remember um or understand that there was a deal to be made on the table. So kind of what started out was me just being friendly and kind of like sharing with people, kind of like opening up their eyes to what they weren't seeing. And it built a lot of friendships, but it also made me then, in a weird way, like a point person for a lot of people for like, what are your thoughts on this? And over the years, a lot of, let's say, powerful people behind the scenes, different vendors, different people, different agencies and different things started coming to me and asking me like, what do you think about this, what do you think about this? And it's just over time you get knowledge and data and make new friends, and it became something where I have been building relationships on a personal level because I love people and I think that it's a great industry and I'm very good at connecting one on one. But also, I was looking for ways where I could create value or show value to people, which goes into a lot of my neurodivergence. I was always trying to kind of like please people and find something. And the funny thing, or the way that things worked with my business now, is that I've learned how to monetize on the things I see that other people don't.
Yeah. So that's a great lead into. I appreciate that a lot. And you're one of those guys that I can pick up the phone and text or call, and we can just brainstorm with each other and hash out random ideas or run through stuff together. But doing it for so long and trying to almost have that consultant be a side piece of what you do, but not knowing how to monetize it. And I'm sure for years and years, you were doing it kind of for free and setting up these partnerships and just being the good person in the room that people go to, but taking the next step to learn how to get compensated for that time and knowledge. I'm sure that was a big jump. And I know there's probably a lot of people that listen to this that aren't like you because you're one of a kind, but are connected to the right people and think they could do this. So I guess how did you go through it, and how did you eventually get to the point where you said, you know what, I think I can do this full time myself just by being this like chat GPT and encyclopedia for people in this deep
Well,
vertical?
first, it started really feeding business for me, honestly, over the years, because what had happened, especially because of how my brain works and like how I think about things, is I started becoming like a data dump for people right and left. The more I was helping people with things, the more they wanted to share in terms of intel of what was working or what wasn't working with their companies, deals that I put together, even when people weren't paying me commissions, they were updating me on what was going on. They were keeping me abreast with what was happening. So it became something as, I moved up in the space, and as I did things where I had a lot of, let's say, really solid intel and things that could help drive businesses for either the companies I worked with or friends in the space or different things. So it started growing a lot from there. And then in the last year is when I really started seeing a lot of things happen, just because I really moved into this kind of Eastern European space, which is where most of like the biggest like direct to consumer clean like e-commerce and e-commerce neutral brands are really coming out of, and a lot of apps. And I started building something really, let's say, special for myself, and seeing how much I was able to add value to the space that from an outsider, I mean, years ago, walking into the space, I never would have thought I'd be walking into like a room of like a meta summit where like everybody wants to talk to me. I'd be like, why am I even here? So seeing that was one thing. Another was like anchors of people in the space who I highly respect, who really gave me certain pushes. Like I'll tell you, for instance, like Cody Bramlett, if you know him. Cody is one of the people. It was a really kind of pivotal moment when I was starting my business, where he said to me, "You have to understand that you know so many people and you can open doors." He's like, someone could be the biggest vendor in the space. They could have the most like robust team. They could have all the cash flow to like burn ad spend, but not being able to get into a certain door or not being able to connect to the right person, like you hold that key, like you need to find a way to monetize that. And it really changed my perspective, seeing that, because I didn't always understand how much value there are. Countless vendors I know of in the space who have had top offers that I gave them ideas for, like, and it's not, I'm not saying that as if I'm the genius or I didn't make that offer, but I understand now where I add value. So in the places where it really makes sense and can build things, I'm now monetizing. And it became, honestly, after my first client that I took on, and I wouldn't even say I do consulting. I call myself like Chat GPT for nine-figure businesses. I just make whatever needs to happen. And for this one client, like, we built out an Amazon team for him. I brought in some of the top Amazon buyers out there and started structuring. He only wants in-house and he wanted like that. I had another client. It just started coming like this. Another client who came to me that was looking for celebrity spokespeople. So I brought some that way. Like, it keeps going where I'm doing different things. I'm doing all sorts of, people placement and all different levels in the space, just because I know so many people, but I also understand like the vibes of company culture, who works where. So I'm kind of just doing anything that kind of comes my way, because that's where my brain operates. And it's just become something as I moved along and I do more with it, I become more, let's say, confident in what I can do. Because if I look back at the last 7 years I've been in the industry, not every idea I had was amazing. Not every idea was something that like was led to success, but every single time I said something wasn't going to work, it didn't work. So I'm trusting my gut in a different way too. I understand the value of just like my own intuition.
Yeah, and that's something to hang your hat on. I go through the same the same thing. Um, just being able to feel confident in the decisions, but doing it for so long that you eventually have to trust yourself, and get to that point where you say, you know what, I do have the ability to do this, and I'm making the right decision. And even for what you said about just being the connector, I tell our salespeople and account managers at our ad network all the time, the people that you talk with, they don't have to have some direct deal and it has to be revenue tied, at least in the beginning. Like a lot of the best partnerships and introductions and things that eventually lead to revenue are just by talking to people that are almost second and third degree connections that we have a mutual client with, like tracking providers or people like you, or AI creative shops that have D2C clients and ecom clients that could benefit getting onboarded to native. So being in that mindset only helps lead to the ultimate goal of
Yeah.
what you're after, you know? But how did all the neurodivergent stuff come to be, and how did you discover that? And almost, I would imagine seeing it more as a superpower than being confused maybe before, but would love to
Yeah, I mean, like
explore
the
that a little
full
bit.
transparency of it all, just because, I have a vlog up now and I share all my inner good, bad, and ugly with it, not related to the business, but just in general on my discovery, is that I basically had like a full-fledged breakdown about 5 months ago. I think just 40 plus years of masking and not understanding that I wasn't in touch with what my needs were. I had a lot of like uh, just health concerns and issues. Like I have a heart issue now called POTS that I deal with, and all these other things. I've fainted basically every week of my life since I'm about 11. So it's one of these things where I had all these different like health concerns and issues that didn't have answers, and there was a lot of different just not feeling comfortable in my own skin and stuff. Like I was always fighting something I was unaware of. I was in a battle I didn't know, and it basically just all came to a head about 5 months ago, and just life felt too stressful and there was too much. And I was very lucky that a dear friend of mine who I was going to for consolation with what I was, processing, said to me like, what if it's not trauma? What if there's something else going on? And that kind of like led into this conversation about autism that changed. Now I've gotten answers for all these different health concerns that I didn't understand. I am learning that as much as I talk for a living and as much as I speak, that I have language delays with emotions, and that I have like all these weird ways of how I like misperceive. So like I'm great with a pattern. I can get into any business call and understand what the person on the other side is looking for. But sometimes I get on a call and I miss certain social cues, or I miss the way that certain, and I didn't always understand why I felt a certain way in group dynamics of discomfort. I could be on a call with one person. The moment a second person comes on, my brain starts acting against me and wondering if they're like trying to get off the call. So I had this kind of like internal like saboteur or like obstacle for the last 40 years of just things I didn't understand in terms of what was going on and how things were. And all of my huge talents, which are the pattern recognition, which is, being able to see things that other people don't see there, my deep level of empathy, like the things that I'm able to perceive in situations that other people can't. Now it all makes sense. Like it now has an explanation. Like I didn't understand. It sounds so overly cocky, and it's not the intention, but I never understood how smart I was. I didn't understand where those were. So as I've been learning and understanding more of like what my needs are and how things are, it's totally different. Like for example, and this has led me to burnout at just about every job I've ever had. You give someone a task that takes them 6 hours, I can get it done in 30 minutes. And it's amazing, and it'll be as efficient and to the point and exactly what you want. The problem is that I always felt kind of behind everyone else, and I was always trying to perform and be there, that I would just take on more projects. And by the time the day was done, I had no energy to even watch television. I was just completely burnt out. And what I now understand is that I can do that task in 30 minutes. It might take you 6 hours, but then I need an hour or two to sit in the dark. So I have different understanding of like how to regulate my energy and how certain things go. So for years in this space, I worked 14, 16 hours a day, and I was burnt out and just killing myself. But I wanted to be like everyone else. I wanted to be the entrepreneurial lifestyle. And what I didn't understand is what I can get done in 4 or 5 hours, is equivalent to someone else's 12, is equivalent to someone else's 14. So now that I'm actually taking proper breaks, that I am trusting my own gut when I need a break, when I need to just the middle of the day sometimes, okay, I'm going to go to the gym for an hour. Okay, I'm going to turn on a TV program because it keeps me regulated, and then I get a crazy amount done.
Yeah. It's makes me think of a story. I had a one of the best salespeople we've ever had, and early on he sent me a Slack message and said, "Hey man, I know it's a little bit weird, but I usually take naps during the middle of the day, and it really helps my performance. So as long as you don't mind, I'm probably going to take a nap between 1 and 2 after I eat lunch." And for me, I was like, absolutely, because it doesn't matter when people do, where they could be up at 4 in the morning, be working at 10 at night. It doesn't matter as long as you get your stuff done. I couldn't care less when you work. But I've always found too, for me, that my highest performing days are the days I give myself more time and don't think that, okay, I have 20 things to do right now. Am I going to spin my mind up and be so anxious for the next couple hours? Or am I just going to kind of piece it together, take a little break, like especially during COVID when people were working from home and just kind of had more time on their hands, and instead of BSing in the office with your friends, you could go on a walk. And living in San Diego, going on an hour and a half walk during the middle of the day and coming back and feeling refreshed and getting after it again was super important. And I think even now it's really important too. But that was one of my questions for you, like with such a high operating mind, like how do you avoid that burnout, especially when it's in our world of like this high pressure performance marketing world where CPAs and AOVs are different by hour and campaigns are crashing, and things are seem so much more tense, and then you take a step back and you're like, okay, this is my job. I understand it. I'm going to figure it out, but the world is not ending, and kind of that pressure on your shoulders when you are overstimulated, I'm sure
Yeah, I
was
mean, first off,
really
is
hard.
changing a little bit things that I do. Like, I'll give you an example. And it goes into the neurodivergence. I have obstacles with executive functioning of things that could be super easy for someone else. Like, I could do a million things for you and blow your mind and show you how great I am. And then you could ask me to schedule an appointment with like six other people, and just scheduling all those times together and everyone's availability could literally throw me through a loop for the day. And I used to really like fight and override my system, like, I'm gonna make this happen. And I felt like I was less than, or I was stupid. But I'll close $1 million deals in 20 minutes. Yeah, I'm not so great with scheduling calls. So there are certain things that I now understand just not to do for myself because it's not where my value is. And like, I put in so many years doing kind of like the grunt work. I put in so many years doing certain things that I'm in a lucky spot that I don't have to do anymore. And because of that, I'm able to lean into the things I know I do well, and the things I don't, I really sit back from. I had a former boss at a company who used to give me issues every time I had problems with like a mundane task that I couldn't get together. And he would say, I want you to be bigger than just this. I want you to like really, you have to be able to do all of this. And I used to internalize and take it on and try so hard. And I realize now, like, no, I was bigger than the way he saw me. It just wasn't going to be in scheduling people's, date books. That's not where my skills lie. So, in kind of leaning into just the things I do well, it's given me a lot more freedom and time to actually execute and also be more present and available. If I go to the gym for 2 hours in the middle of the day and I come home and work till 8, 9 in the evening, maybe even later, working with clients, like putting out fires and handling things, I feel much more regulated because I know also when I'm coming back from the gym, I don't have to check 10 people's calendars for the afternoon. That's not part of my job anymore. So it's something where I'm really able to lean into what I need.
Yeah. So talk to me about this. Now that you've been doing it for a while in this world, what are some of the most overlooked or like maybe underappreciated elements of these marketing funnels and just things that you see that people sometimes ignore but can make a huge difference? Like when you're sitting down and you look back at the last 5 years, what do you see as those most
Well,
underappreciated things?
specifically kind of talking in the VSL space for a moment, I would say specifically in VSLs and direct response is I think that people got, not to generalize, but I've seen a lot of people who got too comfortable for too long in the system and the way things are going. And we have to keep in mind that this is a young industry and there's going to be evolution anywhere. Things change. So, for example, quiz funnels, everyone was talking about quiz funnels at the moment. And for anything really like clean white hat, like whether it's like e-commerce Nutra or if it's something like a VSL, you're going to see a quiz funnel. But I saw for a few years a number of people like big media buyers, big affiliates in the space, big vendors saying like quiz funnels were 10 years ago. That doesn't work on paid media. And like every agency I know uses them, all these big vendors. I didn't understand, but now I see all those people who were telling me a year ago it's a waste of time investing major budgets into getting it going. And so I feel sometimes like the underappreciated elements are that everybody kind of chases what they see as like the operating system at the time. And so if they're not really, you have to kind of keep pivoting and you have to kind of be aware of how things change. There's a lot of changes in direct response and VSLs in general. So I think like quiz funnels are like one of the best things when it comes to really everyone wants customized these days. So that's also something I think that people are overlooking. It doesn't have to be the most branded, most unique funnel in the world, but the customer, the buying pattern on the other end is they want to feel like it's special and unique to them. And they might even with like a white label supplement believe that that is a unique and special product there. It's really important, I think, to connect with people. So I see that. I also see one of the easiest wins I see with a lot of folks, especially when they're trying to scale something into a brand, is spokespeople. I see people just like everybody gets the idea that like a doctor is going to be, the best thing, and doctors do work in a lot of top brands, but I see a lot more brands kind of grassroots up easily just with the proper spokesperson. And I feel like people don't look at that. So there's that. I also don't think upsell downsell flow is always properly, let's say, optimized or taken advantage of. I think in a really smart kind of fashion, there should be some level of continuity built in there, potentially like high ticket coaching on the back end. And there should be, I would think, at least 3 upsells. I mean, you don't want to go beyond that, but you want to really be able to dial into that day one AOV, but then also LTV in general, because if you're scaling on paid media essentially, or you're spending a lot of money on Outbrain or wherever you're going, you're going to be making most of your money on the back end. And it's going to fuel your campaign budget. So I feel like a lot of people are sometimes missing that overall picture. It also comes down to, I think, operating on all sides. So like making sure you're working with the proper like CS team that's doing customer support and outbound sales, making sure you're dialed in on everything with like abandoned carts and retargeting, anyone who's left the page or your site. I think it's understanding every side of the equation to just get money on each side. That's where I see things missing, is when people don't. I just had this conversation with someone earlier today where they were asking me about a very big VSL brand, like how do they stay at the top? How do they do what they're doing? Because none of their individual products or SKUs are huge. They're doing maybe like 50 to 100 sales a day, but they have like 20 offers and they're doing things well. And I said, well, they invested in TikTok, they invested in Amazon. Like they didn't just take when they were having wins on Meta as like, let's just be rich and make money here. They looked at other ways to do so. When everyone else in the space had Meta issues in the last year, they were dialed in on Amazon and TikTok, kind of driving traffic back and forth. So I think it's just looking at all the different things that people kind of stay away from.
Yeah. And one of the biggest pieces of advice in business that I've gotten and still continue to try and do is when things are going well, that's the time to
No,
not pivot, but
exactly.
think about the
Well,
pivot and
because
start to
the
go in other
problem
areas.
is that when, for me, for instance, building my business, it all came about during a breakdown. Like there was a million things going on at once. I'm like finding out about, a medical thing. I left the job I was at. I started my own thing. I dealt with heartbreak. There were a million things going on at once. And even though I had choices and I moved forward, I was in crunch time. I had to do something. Whereas when I look back on it, even though I'm thankful and glad, if I had been, a little bit more strategic in how I built this, it could have been a much easier transition for me. It could have been done a little bit of a different way. And I think that when you're in that success moment, when you're making the great money, when your offer is scaling, those are the moments to really look into, okay, how am I going to take this to the next level? How am I going to have the next product? How am I going to have the next win? Because things change on a dime every day in this industry, and you don't know. I see people who are top of the game 2 years ago who are like bowing out of the space. So you never know how things change.
Yeah, I feel like it always goes that way. And when people wait until crunch time, then it just sometimes it's a success story like you, or sometimes it blows up and people are like, I'm just done
Yeah.
with this,
I listen, I know two companies in
Yeah.
the space who are massive companies who both did layoffs like upwards of like 30% of their staff in the last like 2 months. And it's just one of these things that makes me sad for the space, but these are also people I know who weren't really exploring new avenues.
Can we go back to the
Hmm.
upsells conversation for a second? Because this has just helped me personally understand that. I think it's good for other people too. But when you say, with 3 to 4 products on the back end with a high ticket coaching offer, it doesn't necessarily have to be the brand directly that's selling the front end product. It like a lot of these brands are partnering either with affiliate networks or other direct offer owners and getting some revenue share deal. Can how does all that work, especially with new things like Shopify? Are you able to code in these different affiliate offers, or is it just with emails after the
It
fact?
really
Like,
it
I want to explore
depends
that a little
on the
bit more.
product. It depends on your setup, for example. Like Shopify is going to be a little more limited in terms of like the upsell downsell flow than what you can do in others, but at the same time Shopify offers like a million other solutions that make business that much easier. Like I see huge companies who have their own mids and processing set up and they'll launch 10 offers and then they'll just see how much work goes in and they get set up on Shopify because they can be up in 2 days. So it's a solution that makes so much sense. They have a high approval rate. It's all these things, but upsell downsell is going to be a little different in there. So oftentimes things like that, you want to be really dialed in terms of retention on the email side, like not just with cart abandons and people who visited the website and maybe left after an email submit. You want to really be dialed in all of your retargeting and everything you're sending their way. And high ticket coaching is like one of the best ways you can do. There are a couple different companies in the space. Specifically, I'd say, I don't know if you know, but like Committed Coaches kind of does the best. Maybe I shouldn't share that for everyone to know, but I think it's easy enough if they'll take you.
That's why people tune in. Come
But
on, we
like
name
for
drop a little
instance,
bit.
like they will implement with like real live actual coaches, healthcare professionals, people who are really, dietitians, nutritionists, people who can really like connect and commit, and they can also drive long-term LTV. So with something like that, if they're basically having a coach get on a call with you, they can also keep doing subscriptions and keep clients in a really legitimate, nice way that adds into LTV like crazy, and really just builds also a lot of comfort in terms of like on the upsell downsell flow. It's always important, of course, to deliver more of the same. So for example, if you're doing a digestive supplement, it's great on the first upsell to offer a larger volume order of that, but then on option 2 and option 3 you want to offer in complementary products that could be something in the digital format. So it could be something like, if it's, I don't know, like a digestive or a weight loss, it could be some sort of like a fitness or nutrition campaign on a digital offer. At the same time, it could just be complementary additional supplements. One of the things that can be really nice in terms of that is there are a number of different solutions in the space. Like if you go to like Ship Offers or you go to Jetpack, where you can do on demand, like white label solutions. So if your main offer is, like I was saying, like the digestive supplement, then easily you go to them and you can test out a few other things on the back end. Maybe you want to do a probiotic, maybe you want to do like an apple cider vinegar gummy, like I don't know what ends up being the right fit, but you can really test things out and see what the take rate is also, because not every upsell is going to be alike. And, if you've optimized and done a great front end product, you want to also make sure on the back end on those upsells that they're converting and making the most sense. And the best way to do is to test. So that's why it makes sense to go to like a Ship Offers, for example, and be able to really play around with that on demand catalog, because that's what's going to dial you in. I wouldn't personally invest or go the direction of customizing formulations until you have a proof of concept that people want that product.
Yeah, super smart. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on the whole Eastern European movement as well. Like, I know you're hosting a mastermind in Lithuania coming up, and I'm one of the biggest challenges for us, me based in the United States with a US team now, is understanding the different geographies and where things are blowing up exponentially, like where the smartest people are, where things are coming out of. And in this Eastern European culture, are they just promoting in the geos that they live in? Are they diving into the US? And I kind of been combining that with this whole upsell question as well, because I'm sure there's a very limited amount of offers and white label products you can do in other countries that aren't the big players, right? Like a US, Canada, and maybe some of the big Euro geos. So it's a big broad question. But number one, how did you find out about all these smart people in Lithuania, and then how does that transfer into our world, and like where are they spending and where are they getting advice from and what offers are you, like all that kind of stuff? I'd
So,
love to know.
this goes into again my pattern recognition skills. I went about 2 years ago now to a Meta invite only conference in Cyprus for all of their top app and gaming partners. And I was there and I honestly had never even thought about, as an ignorant American here living in Amsterdam, I couldn't even point out the Netherlands on a map before I showed up here. So the idea of something in Eastern Europe like Lithuania, it wasn't even in my radar, to be honest with you. And I went to this event and I just kept seeing all these top brands and companies that I'd heard of, companies I hadn't heard of, that were just doing dynamic, insane things and really at the top of their pack. And I just kept seeing Lithuania, 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 oh, Poland, oh, Ukraine, Lithuania, Lithuania. And I thought something's got to be up with this. And I started really putting my time and energy and focus into learning this space. So I would say that the top D2C brands existing on the internet are coming out of Eastern Europe. And they're primarily, I would say like a 70% split are starting in the US or North America. But if you look at also, like, I'll give you an example. Vinted, which is the clothing resale app, it's the number one advertising partner of Meta on the internet internationally. Okay, they're Lithuanian. Then you have NordVPN and all the cybersecurity. Then you have big companies like Berga, the phone cases and the laptop skins, Lithuanian. And then you also have these huge monsters in like Ukraine and Poland. Like if you know Better Me, the app, that's from a Ukrainian holding company. All of these massive apps, e-commerce Nutra, e-commerce, really clean branded stuff is all coming out of there. And the work ethic and the way that they're getting things set up is very unique. And I see it very centered to how they operate. Like they have a very specific, I'd say like incubation tank in terms of how they create an offer and kind of bootstrap it to get it to scale. And most of these companies are running with their own traffic internally. They're doing a lot of different things, really dynamic. And to be honest, like the talent and the creativity and the genius on the ground in some of these like Baltic countries it blows my mind. The things that they're doing. I know multiple campaigns that have over like $250,000 a day campaign spend going in just like one specific like ad platform. And to see the success cases and how they're doing things, they're super just dialed in, creative, smart people. And I see things that just kind of blow my mind. And I've been extremely lucky in the network that I've been able to kind of like procure there. I don't know what I was doing, but like I made in very nice with these people. And many of them have become close personal friends. I work with many of them. I do a lot of different things. And I had kind of a brainchild of I want to put together an event, a networking event, something local that really celebrates that space and adds content. So I'm very excited. But on the 9th of October, I'm sure when this airs, it'll be after this, but I'm
Yeah, it'll
hosting
be
a
after.
mini mastermind in Vilnius with Shopify. So I've partnered with Shopify and they're hosting it alongside me. And it's basically going to have about 35 of the top marketers in the Baltic region. We have a fireside chat with a senior meta rep from Meta Warsaw, where we get to go really deep inside, kind of behind the scenes, so to speak. I have a top vendor in the UK and Europe who has basically negotiated two big exits this year and is in the middle of a third, and he's going to be doing a bit of a a breakdown on private equity and exits, and a lot of just how to basically invest your e-commerce brand into something that really lasts. So that's exciting. And then two amazing panels with other meta reps. There's just a lot of exciting stuff. So I'm putting together a mini meta mastermind with Shopify in the next 2 weeks. And I'm just very excited because I get to bring something special to the space, but also I'm very humbled that these geniuses let me sit at the table with them.
Yeah, no, this is the cool stuff about being a networker and finding what's underneath the rug, and being able to connect to the right people. I know, so Slovenia is in Central Europe, it's not Eastern European, but some of the smartest people at our company came from Slovenia when we acquired a DSP, and they're the ones that know all the algos. They're the ones that are behind the scenes doing all the tech stuff. And yeah, some of the smartest people that are now working remotely for some of the largest companies in our space, like that have left Outbrain and Teads and maybe gone on to these really, really big D2C companies. So it's been awesome to see from Art. I'm really excited to see what comes out of that for you guys. And it's I'm, the whole international world of meta, and we see it in our end. We have sellers in Germany, Israel, UK, so many different countries, but it does seem like people there are they're hungrier, and they see what's on the other side. And a good example of that is Brazil has been one of the largest geos that's been kind of growing for us recently. And in Brazil, they're targeting the United States and they're targeting Germany and they're targeting all these other countries. And some of it's affiliate, most of it is affiliate. Probably 90% of these media buyers are affiliates and not actual offer owners. But yeah, now the ability to just find those people in different geos that have a laptop and can get up and
No,
running is super
100%.
cool.
And just going back to what you were asking me before about Eastern Europe with the geos is because you mentioned it with Brazil, like in terms of Europe, a lot of these brands are set up in Europe too. I would say, and I'm sure you see this yourself too, in terms of Europe, Germany, while it's not the same size of market as like the US, for example, Germany, I think, is for most people second to US in terms of the possibilities. You can really scale something. There's a lot of room to growth. There's major density in the market there. And they do really well with like direct response, with VSLs, with all of this stuff. So there's a lot in terms of that. But one of the advantages also, I think, for a lot of these Eastern European brands is that they launch in the US doing what everyone knows and how they do it. But then when it comes to launching in Europe, they already have access to a lot of things that I find American vendors sometimes struggle with. So, like in Europe, for example, it's really important on the payment processing side. Different European countries, like I'm in the Netherlands, next to me is Germany. There are localized payment options that if you don't have them, it hurts your offer. It doesn't work. So it's one of these things where being here locally, you get access to it's a much smaller pool, let's say, the industry in terms of Europe, than the way it works, in my opinion, than the US. So there's a lot more, like most of the European marketers seem to know each other in an easier way, let's say, than a lot of the US ones I see. So there's a lot more shared information, kind of common knowledge of certain things. And I find it a little bit easier for those vendors to then get set up operations wise within Europe.
Yeah. Germany is definitely the second highest best performing geo outside of the United States for us too. Things just seem to work there. Consumers seem to want really high quality white hat things. They're not shying away from buying.
Yeah.
So
I see
completely
it
agree with the
really
same
as like
sentiment.
US or North America, then then Germany, and then I really see like Spanish speaking US, Latin America, and there's so much more from there.
Yeah. So if you could go back 5 years, knowing everything you know now, maybe on a personal level, but also a professional level, and what you've seen in things evolving, what decisions would you change, or I guess what advice would you give
I
yourself?
think the biggest thing would have really been to trust my gut and stand firmer in things. You know, there were times that I went into certain positions or I worked with certain people and I said, I'm going to need X, Y, and Z. And then I showed up on day one and didn't have that and somehow accepted that and kept moving. I understand now on a deeper level, like where my vision is, what my understanding of things, where my gut intuition from day one was. And it would have just been to trust myself better because I think I could have been doing some of the dynamic things I'm doing now, maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. I don't know. So I think that's the biggest thing is really trusting myself and understanding like what I bring to the table because I didn't always see it.
Yeah, it's important. I agree. I've been there too, with new projects or new roles, and have had ideas and questions and asks and things that I knew I needed to be successful, and you
Yeah,
just
you
kind of
just
let things fade out and you
you just
accept
kind of
them and
like
move
see
on.
where things are and you're like, okay, okay, and I always knew, for instance, like my value in creating relationships and working with people, but I didn't understand how valuable it could be. Like I've worked at companies where I've had bosses who have told me that like the information I'm getting isn't correct, just because it was something hard for them to hear or something like that. Whereas now I understand that like the information I have is pretty much currency. Like people are telling me senior things at all different places. It's just one of those things where I really wish that I knew what I was talking about. I wish that there was that inner confidence, which of course just takes time. And I'm not mad that I'm where I'm at today. So it was worth the trip.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's a great title for this
It's
podcast.
true.
Information is currency, because I think it speaks to who you are and kind of the way I try and live too. And just by talking to a lot of people that, like I said, it's not really a revenue deal. It's just knowing things so you can be smarter on the next call and learning
Yeah,
from their experiences. So
I'm never thinking
I think,
transactionally, honestly. Like first off, I'm in a position right now where like I could maybe take on one or two more clients, but I don't need any more clients and I'm not looking. Like I don't do any like active hunting for it. So I'm in a kind of comfortable zone where I can do things, but you never know where things lead. So like I had a call last week with someone who wanted to reach out to me. They a lot of people will come to me when they're looking for jobs or they know something that they need some help because I might have someone for them, excuse me. And this person I had this call with, and it just happened to be as we were talking and going along that they are connected to a doctor that fits the exact description of what one of my clients is looking for as a spokesperson. And it was like amazing and something I've been looking for weeks. And it came from a call where I was just helping a copywriter. There was no way I could have foreseen that that's how it was going to happen. And it's not always so quick like that, but things have a way of coming back to you. And especially the more you talk to people, the more you help with things. I'll always jump on a call with someone. I don't give away the cow for free anymore. Like I'm much more aware of what things I need to charge for and what I need to, give away. But like, I tell anyone, I'll have like a 30-minute discovery call with just about anyone because you don't know what's going to come from it. And we work in an industry that's wild, wild west. There's no blueprint. No two companies do things the same. There's an evolution every week. If I can give someone like every bit of information I learned along the way in this industry was not because someone was supposed to or a company implemented, it was because someone who knew more was kind and showed me the way. So I kind of try to live that way a little more in the space because I've had newbie people who come to me, I help them with something, and it turns out that they're friends with some bigwig I didn't know that they're then like ushering me into because I helped them. You don't know where things go, and I try to really not have expectations when I have a chat because you don't know where it'll go.
Yeah, good things come from conversation. It's how we winded up here, me and you. Um, Look, we've been jamming for like 40 minutes. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we kind of close shop?
The biggest thing I'll say that really has like brought me to where I am now and that I tell anyone new and fresh into the space is ask questions. I mentioned before that the industry, that no two companies do things the same. My background before I got into this space is I'm a gemologist and I worked in diamonds and gemstones. There's hundreds of years of legacy. There's a whole system in place. It doesn't matter what country you go to, there are going to be through lines of how it works. This industry isn't even 30 years old. Things change all the time, and I've seen companies at the top that do the same exact thing, and everything is spoken differently. I always think the smartest person in the room is the one who says they don't know what you're talking about, is the one who asks a question. And that's the biggest thing I could say. That's what I try to be for people when they come to me is I'll always give people the honest answer. If I don't know, I'll tell them also. There's no benefit in me pretending I know something I don't. So it's one of those things I always say to people, and is my biggest piece of advice for anyone entering into the industry or even just trying to grow is understand what you don't know and ask questions.
Love it, dude. I really appreciate you hopping on. It's
It's
always
very
good to catch
nice.
up with you. I'm glad you were one of the first guests, so thank you.